free energy now.
Imagine a world in which each home has its own power generator that obtains its energy in such a way that no fuel has to be added. Imagine every vehicle being able to run without ever stopping for fuel. Imagine each appliance having its own power source that never has to be recharged. That is the world of the future. Join with us now as we track our progress towards such a world.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sterling Allen. You can join us online at freeenergyquest.com. We're joined today, October 9th, 2014, by Mats Lewan, writer at NY Technic, the Swedish equivalent of Popular Science, and author of An Impossible Invention, a book about Andrea Rossi and his E-Cat, which just yesterday finally had their long-awaited third-party test results posted, in which the hot cat ran for 32 days continuous, putting out around 3.5 times more energy out than it required to run, showing that definitely some kind of anomalous effect is in play, involving different isotopes after the tests were presented than were present before the tests, a sure sign of a nuclear process, yet without radioactivity. This is our lead story for this week, this month, and possibly this year. And I can hardly think of a better person to discuss this development with than Mats Lewan. And next week, I'll be interviewing Frank Ackland of eCatWorld.com, the premier news service on the E-Cat as well as cold fusion in general. And today's lead story is actually from Mats, talking about how the CEO of European energy conglomerate Elforsk gave Eleanor the nod based on his review of this E-Cat report. But first, before we get into this interview, let's do our recap of this week in free energy. As I said, we've already talked about the lead story, and we do have a link on our site about the various articles that are being published about this around the web. And actually, the article by Mats Lewan is the first mainstream news organ to publish an article about it. We expect that others will follow suit. Also, we are just about to post a story at PESN written by my associate and longtime writer on the subject of E-Cat, Hank Mills, did an excellent job. It's a 12-page report, so it's taken me a bit to get through the editing on it and posting it. So it may be a little bit later this evening before we get that out, but be looking for that because he's going to be talking about how in this publication, not only did they give great results, but they actually apparently inadvertently gave some of the inside secrets. They were going to just publish a 15-page for the public eyes report, and they ended up publishing the full 54-page report with some juicy inside information. So now, Hank argues, we may have enough information for people to start replicating this technology. And of course, we would encourage anyone who does so to work with Andrea Rossi and his company to be able to, work hand in hand with them to give them proper royalties and licensing, etc. Moving on, other stories this week. Actually, yesterday I got a call on Skype from Nuri Temulenk from Turkey, who witnessed a 30-kilowatt Cumogen in operation for 1 hour. He's representing a financial interest to possibly invest in that technology. He was very impressed with them. And this is one of the latest technologies we reported on in that ilk. But actually, we added to that list number 57 yesterday as well. By Technologies Infinity in Russia. They have an overunity motor generator system that uses the same principle. Their output is around 200 watts, while the input required is less than half of that, 80 watts. And they show a different scientific method of determining the force of input versus output. And then out of the Philippines, there's we mentioned back in January a QMogen, one of these self-loop motor generator systems that is of the low watt range that powers a cell phone. No input, it self-loops and powers a cell phone, and they're looking for financing so that they can scale the technology up and also take it to market. So there's some movement there. We've got some people raising their hand to go check that out and witness that so that we can say to some investors, here's some people who have seen it, here's what their report is, so they can then go through their hoop jumping, so to speak, to do the same thing with their resources. And then we also posted a best home power QMogen contenders page that I actually compiled about a month and a half ago. Actually, be 2 months ago at the Tesla Tech conference. We met some people there who were interested in, helping to put some money behind this whole quest. And so we compiled a list of the best ones that we know of for providing home power. So you're welcome to take a look at that, provide some input about what you think belongs in the top of the list, next, etc. Also posted a story about bragging rights for the scan gauge, Ron Paul, HHO, etc. Nearly a decade ago, we became a reseller of the scan gauge, an aftermarket device to plug into the car's computer to get info such as miles per gallon. And now most automobiles integrate this into their dash display. We saw a good thing long before it went mainstream. Could say the same thing about Ron Paul. I was involved in 2004, actually in 2002, to launch a campaign to get him to run for the 2004 race. I bird dogged that individual as an awesome person and candidate. And then HHO, we also were early in promoting and in recommending that people look into that. And now they're in the marketplace. So that's that. And then we posted today a page about examples of resonance, a directory of various kinds of resonance, both physical and social, including piano wire, external note resonance, speaker and stand resonance, environmental vibrations, and then along the lines of personology resonance, the alphabetics that I came up with, birthdays, people's names, horoscope, numerology are examples of resonance on a social level. Finally, I posted an editorial yesterday or the day before recommending that to get your exotic free energy product to market, don't try to go mainstream at first. Maybe you should target the, people who are outside the box, the preparedness crowd, for example, because the argument is that we get the government and the power we deserve, and right now we've sown the seeds of tyranny, and we're reaping the results of that. And the tyranny that we're getting is a function of our choices as a people. And until we stop deserving tyranny, we're not going to deserve freedom. And free energy is all about freedom. But there is a remnant, so to speak, outside the box people who are awake and trying to get ready for a world fall apart scenario, who are deserving of these technologies, and so they would be a good first target. And if you try and go mainstream, you're probably fighting against maybe some kind of angelic edict that they're not ready yet. I may be wrong on that, but it's just an editorial, something to think about. And so we now come to our featured guest, Mats Lewan. And most of you in our audience don't need any introduction to Mats. As I mentioned, he is a very accomplished writer and journalist, and we're glad to have you on the show, Mats. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sterling.
Yeah, well, from your take, what took place? What was this report about that came out yesterday?
Well, I think it's the the best done report so far regarding measurements on the E-Cat, and most people were looking forward to it for that reason, because the measurements that have been done on the E-Cat, including the ones that I've performed myself, maybe not very professionally, have had lots of issues with them, doubts and details in how measurements were made, which opened up for questions, etc. And with such a controversial technology, those doubts are always a problem because as it's difficult to understand how this device could actually work from a physical point of view, it's much easier to believe that you have made some error in the measurements. In the end, what we have in front of us is something that shouldn't work, but we have observation that tells us that it works. So if I can say that the observation is wrong, I have solved the problem, the thing doesn't work. So that's the reason why the observations and the measurements have to be so carefully done. And this measurement that they have done now in March this year, and that was presented in this report, were the best so far. I think that's the most important aspect of it. Then what they presented in the report was specifically interesting because it was not only excess heat measured very carefully, but also from 5 different chemical methods, they have made analysis of the composition of the fuel before and after the process, and demonstrated that there had been an isotopic change in the fuel. Well, that means that there had been a change in the atomic nuclei of the fuel, and such changes in the nuclei of the atoms can only happen if it's a nuclear reaction, and that's the big point with this technology. It's supposed to be a nuclear reaction, and if it is a nuclear reaction, it's so much more powerful than any other energy source that we have around, except for other nuclear reactions, but they are very dangerous. So these two things, that is a very carefully done measurement, and that it presents not only excess heat, but also is isotopic changes. It's very important.
Let's also talk about this article you put up in NY Technic today about the I'm not sure how you pronounce that. I may be mispronouncing the name of your journal because I only see it in print. I don't hear it spoken.
Yeah, well, no problem. It should be pronounced Ny Teknik in Sweden.
Okay.
Never mind. Yeah.
Like new technique?
Yeah, that means new technology. So basically, yeah. Well, that was actually an opinion, an op-ed from the CIO of the Elforsk, which is an association among the power production industry in Sweden and the research efforts. So it was nothing that we wrote. It was an op-ed from him.
Ah. So you were basically just posting what he had sent you?
Well, I didn't post it. I wasn't involved in that at all. We have a news team. We have we're about 15 journalists working on this newspaper, and one of my colleagues is responsible for the forum for debate and op-eds, and they contacted us and wanted to publish this op-ed with regard to the presentation of the report. Partly because they would like to restore their credibility, because they've been attacked very hard here in Sweden. This spring we had the National Swedish Radio Network dedicating a whole week of airtime with four radio shows attacking me and the researchers doing this investigations, and Elforsk who did finance this research. And I think they felt a little bit hurt on that attack and wanted to restore their credibility. So now, with this report being presented, they took the occasion to do that.
So they had cited in favor of looking into the E-Cat, and they were slammed for that by the skeptics, along with you and others. And so they're basically saying vindication time.
Yeah, more or less. To be honest, it's more or less that. That's right.
Okay. Now, from there were measures taken in this testing to take a careful analysis of radioactivity. What did they find in that regard? Well,
they didn't find any radioactivity at all. Not from the fuel, not from the used fuel, the fuel after the process, and not during with the reactor running outside the reactor. There might be there might be some radioactivity, some weak radioactivity inside the reactor, but outside the reactor, basically, there was no radioactivity above background level that could be measured or detected.
Do you feel like, and do the people who've been looking at this feel like they took adequate measures to detect radioactivity?
Oh yeah, they are very, very experienced people. So I believe they did everything they could to detect those levels.
Now, the scientists who signed off on this report, there were 6 PhDs, as far as I could tell, professors and whatnot, who put their names on the line. From a political point of view, how do you feel they did in terms of putting the reputation on the line and then, basically taking a stand?
Well, this is typical for this for the area of cold fusion or LENR, that it's very, very, very tricky to get into this research. Very risky because you risk your career. And this is not an exception. It's typical because all these PhDs, all these professors are retired. And many other researchers in this field are also people being all retired or almost retired, because young people don't dare to get into it. It's too risky. When young people go into, the only one who's not retired is the Italian Giuseppe Levi, and he's almost the only young researcher in this field connected with this field in the whole world, because it's just too risky. It's so taboo. That many researchers who would like to get into it, they don't, because they know the risk their career.
To talk about this risky thing, even in the alternative media, we're seeing this pushback, not just in mainstream. I was scheduled to be on Coast to Coast tonight, and we were going to have you on, and Andrea Rossi and Frank Ackland. We're hoping to have kind of a powwow. And they're pushing back. I may yet still be on that show, but they're not really comfortable with sticking their necks out. And I was so surprised about that.
Well, I think it's a very complex question. We have to go way back to 1989 when Fleischmann and Pons presented their results. And what happened? The research, the academic community decided that this was fraud or wishful thinking or whatever. And meanwhile, media was burnt too, because it was all over the headlines all over the world. And mainstream media was burnt in that because they did blow it up. They did publish it very, very broadly, and then afterwards realized that it probably was a mistake. So after that, I think most media think that, well, we better not touch it again, because this is too hot. And then, well, after now 25 years have passed, but I've been speaking to mainstream media about this, and part of it is that it's just too complex for them to present, because they know that they got an audience where they have to present a message which has to be quite easily understood in a few minutes. And if you get into this story and try to present it in a few minutes, and you get into all the doubts and people attacking each other and the scientific community being very skeptical, in the end, the audience will come out of that thinking, well, what? And that's a very big risk for a mainstream media. So I'm not really sure it's really that they don't dare to stick their neck out. It's just that it's so difficult to present because it's so very complex. And you really have to understand both the science part of it and the psychological part of it, the sociological part of it, and the history of it, to put your feet on the ground and have an opinion about it. So it is not easy.
But isn't a media's responsibility to see a hot story and get it out there? Isn't that something that they salivate after?
Yeah, I think so. And the way I try to pitch it, and the way I look at all these stories still this day, also when this report has been published, because I think it's a very good report. I think the values presented and the conclusions presented are valid, but I'm still cautious, because we always have to be cautious, because there is very little research done publicly on the E-Cat. So you still have to be cautious. But my main point is this technology, we have sufficiently indications that it might work, and the potential of this technology, if it works, is so huge, because it's going to change the world, literally change the world, that we have to go and look at it. And my pitch to mainstream media is that it's absurd that skeptics should stop researchers from looking into this technology. We don't have to say that we're sure that it's working, but it's obvious to me that we should look at it, because the potential is so huge and there are enough indications that it might work that we should continue looking at it. That's my main point.
Do you think this report's going to open that door a lot?
Unfortunately, not. We're not really there yet. One thing that was good about the op-ed from Elforsk, the Swedish the Power Industry Research Institute today in our newspaper, was that they publicly say that they're gonna support continued research in this field and try to fund it as well. I think that's an important message, and I hope that other institutions could go along on the same road, because increased funding is what we need. It's absolutely unacceptable that after 25 years of a discovery that might have been true, but that was rejected by the scientific community. But as we know now, there were really a possibility that it is true, because the results from Fleischmann and Pons have been replicated several times. It's unacceptable that there is so little funding for this technology still, because the potential is so huge, as I said before, that we have to look at it.
Yeah. We will be back in 4 minutes. Don't go away.
Known worldwide as the most consistently fascinating, informative, and unique program on radio, the Jeff Rense program can be yours to listen to anytime, anywhere, whenever you want to hear it. For pennies a day, our subscribers can download any of Jeff's thousands of programs featuring a treasury of newsmakers, researchers, eyewitnesses, and incredible subjects, all in MP3 commercial-free, crystal-clear 56-bit digital sound, and take these often unforgettable programs with them wherever they go. As a subscriber, you can also listen live at airtime, online, anywhere in the world, or browse through our archives of over 6,000 hours of legendary broadcasts. Subscribe now by taking the link at the top of Rense.com and enrich your mind with the most unique panorama of vital information and the best independent, honest journalism in radio. Look for the Subscribe Now link on Rense.com and give yourself the knowledge you need for these unprecedented times.
Presently, a leading technology in our top 5 exotic free energy technologies listing is what we call hydroxy technology, in which onboard electrolysis creates hydrogen and oxygen. Unseparated, it's also called Brown's gas, or HHO. By then adding this to the fuel, the mileage and horsepower of an engine can be significantly improved while reducing emissions. One of the reasons for this is that Brown's gas breaks down the larger chain fuel molecules so they can be utilized and not exhausted unburned. There are many companies worldwide that are making and selling these hydroxy systems. We've compiled a list for you at besthydroxytechnologies.com. One of my favorites is Green Fuel H2O. They haven't yet sold as many as the 2 companies ahead of them, but they have a great product and service. Go to greenwaterfuel.com, which will credit us with the referral. Again, that's greenwaterfuel.com.
Free energy, now!
Welcome back to the show. We are talking with Matt Lewan, who wrote the book An Impossible Invention. And Matt, in that book, which, by the way, has received really high reviews by people in the industry. Good job. You talk about how this technology will be world-changing. Let's talk about that for a minute. Why would that be?
Oh, it's very easy, you know. Basically, all reactions, exothermal reactions on Earth bringing us energy are chemical. And the only exceptions are the nuclear power that we have in nuclear plants and nuclear reactions in the sun, which is fusion. We have them in the hydrogen bomb. It's very difficult to control the fusion power. And the advantage with nuclear power is that it's so much more dense. It's so, you got from a millionth of the fuel that you have in a chemical reaction, you have the same amount of energy in the nuclear reaction. So instead of bringing a ton of fuel to a chemical reaction, you can bring a gram of fuel, which is 1 million times less for a nuclear reaction. That makes it a thing you can put in your pocket. But the backside of nuclear reactions so far is that the ones we know, the fission that we have in nuclear plants and fusion that we have in the hydrogen bomb and in the sun, they are very dangerous and very difficult to control. You need huge plants, lots of protection because you have deadly radiation and everything. So cold fusion would be a nuclear reaction, so extremely compact, but without radiation and not with those extreme temperatures that you have in fusion, which are you need 100,000 degrees. Then you need tens of millions of degrees. So that would be just fabulous because you could have an energy source that would be running on almost no fuel at all in your pocket, and it would not be dangerous. So of course that would be wonderful. Now cold fusion is actually seems to be real, and that's the thing about this. The energy catalyzer, the E-Cat, seems to be running on a process that is a nuclear reaction because it creates so much energy from almost no fuel, and it doesn't emit any radiation, nor from the fuel, neither from the fuel, nor from the used fuel, and not when running. And it uses fuel which is very abundant on Earth, the metal nickel. So if we can make that work, and then once we make it work, we can maybe scale it up and scale it down to small batteries or to power plants, that would solve any energy problem on Earth. We could have energy everywhere. And once you have energy, you solve a series of global issues. You could solve the climate issue. You could get clean water to everyone on Earth. And you could, specifically, you would change also all geopolitical situations on Earth because you wouldn't have the political power over energy sources that you have today with coal and gas and oil. So it's a huge game changer.
Yeah, and very well said. Now, when we're talking about this technology right now, isn't it technically in the marketplace for industrial applications?
Well, we don't really know. What we know is that Andrea Rossi has sold the rights to this technology and is developing it together with an American company called Industrial Heat, which is created under an investment fund called Cherokee. Cherokee is an investment fund. I think they have at disposal about $2 billion, something like that. And the CEO, his name is, I slipped my mind. He's well known for his environmental interest, and the fund has been investing in turning old industrial properties to solar power plants. And apparently they've been interested in this technology and have invested in it. And they're supposedly developing now some kind of industrial products from the core technology to provide energy in industrial situations. But we know very little, and we don't know how far they reached, and we don't know when they will present products on the market.
Yeah, they've been very tight-lipped compared to how open Andrea was prior to signing on with them. But he's very good to respond to emails and answer if he can. I find that typically he'll get back to an email within, 10 hours. Very cordial.
Yeah.
So with this, so we don't even know how close we are to market with them.
I wouldn't say that we know that. I don't think we know.
Now, what would be the likely first iteration that we would see coming from them in the market?
Oh, that would be industrial applications. That would be a power source that would feed energy, heat, or possibly also electricity into an industrial plant, producing something, giving heat for a chemical process or something. And it will all start there. Then probably it will last a couple of years at least until we can have consumer products, 5 or 10 years, because you have to solve all security issues and safety issues and be sure that it's very stable and can be turned off and turned on by anyone without any problems. So that will take some time. But, another thing with this technology is that it seems to be, it's not really rocket science. Once you figure out how it works, it seems to be quite simple. So there is also a big risk that it might be reverse engineered quite fast. And if it's reverse engineered, I think it's going to spread over the world much faster than we could imagine. And once, such a technology gets into the hands of skilled engineers and developers, they can do lots of stuff with it. What we're still lacking, though, and that's a problem, we're still lacking an accepted theory for how this process is actually going on from the physical point of view. And lacking the theory is quite dangerous when you're dealing with industrial development, because it means that you don't really know what you're doing. And it opens up for accidents, for mistakes. So it's really important that as soon as possible that we have research results and measurements that gives us the possibility to define a valid theory for how this process is working.
Yeah, and also we'll want to talk when we come back about what Hank said about possibly this report giving enough information to start replicating.
The word is out. GetTheT.com. People are waking up to all natural products that help your health. GetTheT.com is the web address to optimum health naturally. Life Change Tea is not just green tea. It is a blend of 8 herbs, specially blended to work and help with your digestive tract. When your stomach feels good, you feel good. Get rid of the yuck that stores up in your colon. Lose some weight naturally. Feel good and enhance your energy. All natural, no caffeine, and it tastes great. Don't wait. Order now at GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Or you can call us at 928-308-0408. 928-308-0408. Tired of the fear of health loss and sickness? Give your immune system some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. Life's too short to worry and fear. It's time to smile at your doctors naturally. GetTheT.com.
As you listen to and benefit from this Free Energy Quest show, as we track the many cutting-edge clean energy technologies likely to not only be ecological, but economical as well, we would like to remind you that we are listener-supported. You can send donations via PayPal to donate@pesn.com, or you can click on the donate link found on our web pages. You might consider a monthly pledge. You're welcome to send us ideas about possible advertisers or products to present to our esteemed audience via that email as well. Because we spend so much time doing the news, we don't spend quite as much time as we should looking for advertisers and items we can sell in our store, a process that can be quite time-consuming. So presently, we depend on your donations to help keep us afloat. With your assistance, we can help transform this planet from a scarcity slave mentality to an abundance creator mentality with exotic free energy technologies bringing power and freedom to the people. Again, that email address is donate@pesn.com.
Free energy. now.
Welcome back to the show. We are talking with Mats Lewan from NY Technic and author of An Impossible Invention. Now, Mats, as I mentioned in the introduction, this technology has, in the report, there was a lot of information that was released that maybe wasn't intended to be released, but it's now been opened. And so would you say it's almost like a shooting or starting gun has been fired and it's a race to see who can replicate first?
Well, yeah, I suppose lots of people will try now. Actually, I haven't a clue of how easy it is because, well, what's been revealed in this report, which was new, are some components of the fuel that Andrea Rossis is using. But during these years, when I followed this story, I've got some kind of understanding that that's not the whole story. Important parts are also how the reactor chamber is constructed and how you stimulate the process by electrical pulses or magnetic pulses or something. And I think it's not that easy actually to replicate it. Although I believe that once you understand how it's made, it's easy to have it work. But I think it could be quite tricky actually to replicate it, even with this information, with this new information.
Okay. There's some pretty clever people out there.
Yeah, that's true.
And Hank has been following this thing extremely closely, minutely, and he's satisfied that there's enough information now. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Now, what would you say? People can go get your book at animpossibleinvention.com. How well has that thing sold?
Well, it was quite good in the beginning when I released it in April. Then, during the months that passed by, the sales have slowed down a little bit, and I think that's natural. Now I'm preparing a second edition where I add some updates, minor updates and corrections, and also the information about this third-party report. And I also a week ago or something, I put it up on Amazon to reach a broader audience, and I'm very satisfied that it's making a good impression on Amazon with nice reviews both from readers and from some editorial reviews that I put in there. And I've got a good hope that now, if this story maybe gets a broader attention, that my book can contribute to get some light on this technology and the possibilities that it might bring for the world and humanity if it works.
What do you think the chances are that some mainstream media will pick up this story and talk about it?
I actually think it's still early. In the beginning, when I started to follow this story more than 3 years ago, I thought that it would be picked up any day, you know. But then I understood the difficulty for mainstream media to pick it up, and all the doubts that there are in there, and how strong the attachment is in the scientific community to the theories that are established, and according to which this process is impossible. So, you know, we've got a very, very, very strong resistance towards getting this story through. And I think that, by now I've been starting to think that it's not going to hit the mainstream media until you can buy the devices around the corner. And, we'll see. I actually don't know.
Yeah, because I would think on the other side that scientists have a natural curiosity, a new phenomena to figure out what's behind it.
Yeah, well, that's not really true, I understood. Because what I found out is that scientists are like all of us, that we have a lot of other biases in our mind that influence how we look upon things. And I've seen that, you know, there are two kinds of people among ordinary people and among scientists, and those are the ones who believe they are curious and open-minded, but they're not really open-minded, because if what they discover makes them have to change what they really believe in, then that will make them not look at the thing what they discovered and make them not being open-minded. Then on the other hand, you have those who are really open-minded. And those are two different ways of thinking, and it's about your character as a personality. I wouldn't judge the one or the other, because we're just different people. But what I discovered is that scientists are like all of us. And I think they're more influenced by their character than they believe. Most people think that science is about truth and black and white and everything is easy. It's not. Science is as influenced about people's beliefs as much of the other things we have around us in society. Unfortunately, it's like that. But
if anything, I think modern scientific dogma will be more entrenched than religious dogma has been historically.
Well, maybe not, but maybe yes, because there's something in it, what you're saying. But I mean, at least we have the scientific method, and you should look at your observations and your results, and you should be open to them, even though you don't have a theory that back them up, even though it threatens what you believe in from before. So that's the difficulty. And the difficulty apparently in the scientific community regarding this issue is that it's been very difficult to accept the observations that have been done, because they're actually in conflict with what established theories tell us about physics and nuclear physics.
Let's go back 3 years. Both you and I attended the demonstration in October 2011 of the 1 megawatt running at half power system in Bologna, Italy, where Andrea Rossi demonstrated it to a customer, and we were able to go in for a few minutes at a time. What did you think of that demonstration, and what's changed with you over time?
Well, that demonstration in particular didn't mean very much to me, because I didn't have any possibility to assess the measurement at all. I was basically there as a distant observer, and I had just to accept what was communicated. So I could as well have been at home and being told this. So that demonstration in itself was the only thing that actually had any importance, was the fact that you don't, if you're a fraudster, you don't make such a big fuss to construct that big plant just to fool people. It's just there are so many easier ways to fool people than doing that. So in that way, it was kind of an increased credibility for Andrea Rossi, because I wouldn't believe any fraudster to go that way. But apart from that, the demonstration in itself didn't tell me so much.
Outside of Andrea Rossi, what other technologies are you interested in and see as being a close second in the cold fusion race?
Well, I actually haven't studied many of the others. I was following Defcalion, and I had very great difficulties to assess if they had something for real or if they were just making things up. And unfortunately, what I found lately, with information from their partners in Europe, is that maybe they actually don't have anything at all. But I still don't know. I really still don't know. But apart from them, I haven't been looking closely on, like, we have Brillouin, and we have Blacklight Power, and a few others, and I've been too distant from them to be able to have any informed opinion about their technologies. But I mean, what history of technology teaches us is that when there is a new technology coming up, normally it's not invented just in one place. Normally it's invented in 3 or 4 places independently at the same time. So I would expect some similar technology to come out at the same time as the E-Cat, if it works, just based on experiences from history of technology.
And what happens often when those independent people run into each other is they accuse each other of stealing each other's idea when they did indeed come up with it independently.
Oh yeah, I mean that happens, of course. Or they might collaborate. That's impossible to say, because that's only how we are as persons, how we collaborate, or if we feel threatened or whatever. In any case, I think for me, I actually. Apart from the low energy nuclear reactions, which I've been following in this case, I haven't been studying free energy, other kind of free energy, similar ideas very much, because I'm an engineer, and very often when I hear of different kind of technologies, promising free energy, they're just violating the laws of thermodynamics. They're kind of perpetuum mobile. And I don't believe in those, because the laws of thermodynamics are so essential that we don't mess with them. The low energy nuclear reactions, on the other hand, they don't violate anything of this, because there is a basic idea, a basic fundamental possibility that you have very well known changes in the nucleus of the atom that can release energy. We don't know how it works, but the basic principle is very possible. So it's not in any conflict with the laws of thermodynamics in that sense.
Well, Mats, we really appreciate you coming on the show with us today. Again, we refer people to your website, An Impossible Invention.com, and keep up the great work.
Okay, thank you very much, Sterling. It's been a pleasure to be a guest here.
You've been listening to Free Energy Now, brought to you by PES, Pure Energy Systems. You may access past archives and upcoming show info at freeenergynow.net, and join us for our daily news at freeenergynews.com. We invite you to see our directory of energy technologies at peswiki.com. That's PESWIKI.com. PES, the Pure Energy Systems Information Network.
You're listening to the Rents Radio Network, nationwide and worldwide on the net and at rents.com.
Free Energy Now.
Imagine a world in which each home has its own power generator that obtains its energy in such a way that no fuel has to be added. Imagine every vehicle being able to run without ever stopping for fuel. Imagine each appliance having its own power source that never has to be recharged. That is the world of the future. Join with us now as we track our progress towards such a world.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sterling Allen. You can join us online at freeenergyquest.com. We're joined today, October 9th, 2014, by Mats Lewan, writer at NY Technic, the Swedish equivalent of Popular Science, and author of be able to, work hand in hand with them to give them proper royalties and licensing, etc. Moving on. Other stories this week. Actually, yesterday I got a call on Skype from Nuri Temulenk from Turkey, who witnessed a 30-kilowatt Cumogen in operation for 1 hour. He's representing a financial interest to possibly invest in that technology. He was very impressed with them. And this is one of the latest technologies we reported on in that ilk. But actually, we added to that list number 57 yesterday as well, by Technologies Infinity in Russia. They have an overunity motor generator system that uses today's lead story. Is actually from Mats, talking about how the CEO of European energy conglomerate Elforsk gave Eleanor the nod based on his review of this E-Cat report. But first, before we get into this interview, let's do our recap of this week in free energy. As I said, we've already talked about the lead story, and we do have a link on our site about the various articles that are being published about this around the web. And actually, the article by Mats Lewan is the first mainstream news organ to publish an article about it. We expect that others will follow suit. Also, we are just about to post a story at PESN written by my associate and longtime An Impossible Invention, a book about Andrea Rossi and his E-Cat, which just yesterday finally had their long-awaited third-party test results posted, in which the hot cat ran for 32 days continuous, putting out around 3.5 times more energy out than it required to run, showing that definitely some kind of anomalous effect is in play, involving different isotopes after the tests were presented than were present before the tests, a sure sign of a nuclear process, yet without radioactivity. This is our lead story for this week, this month, and possibly this year. And I can hardly think of a better person to discuss this development with than Mats Lewan. And next week, I'll be interviewing Frank Ackland of eCatWorld.com, the premier news service on the E-Cat as well as cold fusion in general. And writer on the subject of E-Cat, Hank Mills, did an excellent job. It's a 12-page report, so it's taken me a bit to get through the editing on it and posting it. So it may be a little bit later this evening before we get that out, but be looking for that because he's going to be talking about how in this publication, not only did they give great results, but they actually apparently inadvertently gave some of the inside secrets. They were going to just publish a 15-page for the public eyes report, and they ended up publishing the full 54-page report with some juicy inside information. So now, Hank argues, we may have enough information for people to start replicating this technology. And of course, we would encourage anyone who does so to work with Andrea Rossi and his company to